Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Appreciate you being here. Now, this meeting is the first 30 minutes here is a public hearing that we're going to be dealing on a couple of issues during this public hearing. And I'll ask, we'll take one at a time and move along and see how long it takes us. If it doesn't take us the whole length of time, we will actually take a break, but we'll leave it open until 6 o'clock when we'll start our regular June meeting. Now, remind you, this is social distancing. However, I know some of you come in the same car, live in the same house. I guess I can't argue if you stay side by side. But rest of you, social distancing, please. We actually being carried live, I believe, on the stream. So actually people will be checking in, making sure that they can hear what's going on, and we'll continue. All right, I'm going to call this public hearing to order here, and we're going to start discussing the items. If you got an agenda back here, you'll see the first item, conditional use permit for 4 poultry farm and barracks. So we have, that is the first one, Mr. Tyler Owensby. Mr. Owensby, would you come forward and tell us why you want to get in the chicken business?
My name's Tyler Owensby. I'm already in the chicken business, but I want to expand. I have an opportunity to sell my existing farm towards Livonia, Martin area, and move closer towards where my family is in Red Hill. So I'm looking at purchasing some of my great-grandfather's land on Red Hill Dirt Road to build 4 new breeder houses. So I'm asking for variance, but the land owners that I'm asking variance from is Mr. Brown, and he came with me, and they are fine with me building a little closer to the property line than what is in the zoning, for the zoning. But if y'all have any questions or anything, the reason that the houses have to go there is because of the layout of the land. The topographical layout is too steep. If I was to push them further to the east, there's too far of a drop. I'm going to have to cut down, I think, about 25 feet of dirt. It's just the top of a hill, and it'll have to be spread out. There's no existing houses very close at all except one, but I do meet my setbacks for that one house. There's actually, it's a good place in my opinion for chicken houses because there is so much land on the backside that could never be developed, and I don't think it would ever harm anything. It would ever harm anybody else. There is one house that's close, like I said, that belongs to Mr. Sweatman, but that's about it. I did print off this. I don't know if y'all looked at it, but I printed it off and it would show you where the chicken houses are going and the distance of the houses in between, and it's very far. I don't know if y'all want to pass it around and kind of look, but the red dots are the only houses that are closed, and there's about 1,200 acres behind it that nobody lives on. So it's different tracts, but you can kind of tell and that would be the end of the exhaust fans would be going off of, would be that end that there's no dwelling homes at all by there. The red dots are the houses, and then the red square would be where the poultry houses would be, and that is shown in the site plan that was submitted also. And I think there was I submitted a paper also that showed the exact distance from the poultry houses to the house, from the exhaust fans to the house, so you can kind of get a better understanding.
Do you have the barracks in writing?
Yes, I do. They did not sign it. We wasn't able. Mr. Brown's mother's 94, and she's not getting out. I wasn't able to get a notary, but to notarize it. But I did write it up. Had a lawyer write it up, and they have it and have agreed but they haven't signed it. But he can testify
Right. Right.
that they have a copy of it.
So-
I've tried to line up a notary to go to their house to sign it, but I
Right.
haven't able to.
I understand that,
apologize.
but what you said is you'll finalize that by getting the notary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't, I'm just not, and Mr. Brand can testify, I've tried to get a notary, I'm just not yet, and they said that they would sign it whenever I did. And, I submitted a copy to the board, what it was drawn up, the paperwork,
Yes.
and, you know, they were all in agreement on it, the variance board, but, I apologize, I wasn't able to get it notarized, but she's not really left the house much to go to.
I understand that. Commissioners, y'all got any questions? Mr. Owensby?
Which property is Mr. Sweatman's? Is it to the,
Is the-
It's the closest one to the left.
okay,
On the left side of the paper, it's got a star kind of where his house is,
yeah, okay.
and,
What was that?
the rest of them,
446?
yeah, feet from the corner of the chicken house, and I'll be 254 feet from his property line. So I think the zoning is 200 feet, but I'll actually be from that corner pin 254 feet from Mr. Sweatman's property line.
Okay,
And then 440 something feet from his,
from his house.
from house, yeah. But, the zoning board recommended the buffer, so, that was what the zoning board recommended, the evergreen vegetated buffers.
So you agree with what the zoning people recommended,
Yeah, I mean,
that you put a greenery buffer?
yeah, that was kind of in our, I can understand that if that's what they would want. I think they wanted me to do a buffer of a certain percent of different trees was what they wanted.
The recommendations, like for the planning staff and the commission, are slightly different. The commission says the planted trees should be a variety of holly species. The other one says that no more than 30% of the buffer can be of the same species. So is that, we settle on which one we wanted?
Well, that'll be, I guess, for y'all to decide. I was gonna address that later, but
Okay.
I would caution y'all dictating what species it needs to be.
Okay.
Let him pick that out. That way, if it does fail, if he plants it and they die, it doesn't work, it doesn't come back on us.
Okay.
But yeah, it does vary a little bit, but I was gonna address that.
Those Leland cypress are hit or miss. Sometimes they just, they
Right.
don't take.
I really thought about planting more holly trees and magnolia trees to kind of grow together. I mean, I like magnolia trees, so if I'm having to plant them, at least I can like them.
Right.
But I never took a certain percent of each species, you know, just in case one species can do. I know the Leyland cypress, they get those bagworms.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be full grown and get bagworms and die, so I would rather have something a little more hardy.
Any other questions for Mr. Owensby?
How you gonna get to them off of Red Hill Road or?
There's already a driveway, it's called Coker Lane, and it's already been, it has already been, surveyed out and submitted as a road. It had to be by Mr. Coker. Mr. John Coker is the owner of the property.
Yeah.
And so it'll be that existing driveway will be the one to the chicken house. There won't have to be anything cut, any other driveways or anything cut. So it'll just be the existing driveway that leads up.
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you, sir, appreciate it. Now, we got anybody that would like to come up and oppose that proposition that Mr. Owensby is recommending what's coming to the commissioners tonight, please do so. Let's move to the second item.
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
can we get Mr. Brown to come up and just state that he is good with that, since we will be voting on this tonight?
Good point. Mr. Brown, would you come forward? That's a good point, Mr. Have you've heard what, Mr. Owensby said, you want to verify that?
Yes. We happily agree.
So you have agreement that once it gets notarized, y'all going to sign it?
Right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. That's a good question. All right, let's move to the second item here, request for a variance of side yard setback. We got Mr. Giver here. Come on forward, please, and tell us about the variance.
What it is, and I'm actually the surveyor of record for this property, but my client he's got a 5-acre parcel of property that has 5 existing residences already on it, and it's all one continuous parcel. And he's wanting to split it up into 5 individual 1-acre parcels. The problem is 2 of the existing residences are too close to meet the setback requirements of the 35-foot side setback. So we can meet it on one of them, but we need a 5-foot variance on the other one to meet that, to allow those to be the minimum 1-acre parcels and have separate parcels for every residence.
So you only got one that you're going to need a variance from?
Yes, yeah, just one.
Out of the 5?
Yeah, yeah. All the rest of them do work with the setbacks and everything. And these residences have existed, I'm guessing, probably 30 years. I mean, they're not new, they've been there a long time. I've lived close to them for 15 years, and I know they've been there my whole time over there. So.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Gilbert? Of course, we've been given all this material previously from the planning and zoning coming out of our office and so forth, so we studied it pretty closely, both presentations today. That might be why we don't have too many questions,
Yeah,
which is
that's
good. Yeah. No questions? Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Do you have anybody want to come up and object to that proposal? Hearing none, what we will do is just take a recess. We won't adjourn, but we'll take a recess. Relax, talk what you want to do, but if we see someone that wants to come in and be on the positive side or the negative side, we'll give them opportunity, and we will go from there. So we'll start back about 2 minutes before 6. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got 2 minutes till 6. So what we're going to do is see if anybody came in while we was on break there for the public hearing. If anybody came in and wants to talk to the commissioners concerning the 2 public hearing items, please come forward. Well, hearing none then, we're going to declare the public hearing is closed. And we're going to start here just a second with our June 1st, 6 p.m. at the Justice Center Board of Commissioners meeting. Welcome. Appreciate you being here tonight. Remember the social distance. We are on Zoom, so a lot of people are probably out there in the county watching this meeting tonight. So I'm going to call this meeting to order and we'll get started. As you know, each meeting we start with an invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. We take turns, rotation among the commissioners. So I'm going to call on Dr. Maxson if he will lead us the invocation and the pledge. Please stand.
Let's bow our heads. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to be able to meet together again after such a long absence. And we thank you for sparing our county the brunt of this disease as it spread through our state and our nation. Help us tonight to make wise decisions for the people we represent. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated. Now we'll move down to the minutes. As you see in the month of May, if you got an agenda there, we had several board meetings, public hearings, special call meetings, and so forth. Each of those are sent out to us by our interim clerk, Mrs. Gina Kiesler, appreciate that. We will take them as a whole here, commissioners. Do I have a motion that we accept the minutes as written?
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes as written, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Weston. Makes that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Michelson. Make a second. Any discussion about the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? We have a 5-0 vote for the minutes. Now we're going to move into items for discussion and a conditional use permit for the 4 poultry houses that we just had the public hearing on. And we mostly had only positive things to say, but I'm gonna ask Mr. Scott if he'd come up and give us a rundown of what's the recommendation of the planning and zoning.
All right, appreciate it, Chairman. So, May 14th, the Planning Commission had the public hearing for Mr. Owenby's conditional use permit and variance request. You heard the plan from Mr. Owenby earlier. The closest neighbors, the Sweatmans, did have some concerns, did have some issues. It is mostly kind of, it's hardwood trees between their house and the front of those poultry houses. So the recommendation that the planning staff provided to the planning commission was to approve the conditional use and the variance on the condition that there's a vegetative buffer planted between Mr. Owenby's property and the western property line of the Browns and Mr. Owenby's property line, which is, if you do a visual, that'll give the most visual screening between the Sweatmans and Mr. Owenby's proposed poultry houses. As Dr. Mackinson pointed out, the recommendation for those conditions varied slightly between the planning staff and the planning commission. They recommended the trees be planted at a height of 4 to 6 feet when planted. My recommendation was a 2.5 inch caliper, which is 2.5 inch diameter. That would put it generally around a 6 to 8 foot tree when planted. So that was one difference. The second difference was my recommendation was no more than 30% of the trees be planted of the same species, and we kind of discussed that. If you have one species planted and the disease comes, it can wipe out that whole screen. And also, I don't think it's good practice for us as the county to dictate what needs to be planted. A couple reasons, mainly being if it doesn't work or it fails, they can come back, say, hey, we did what we were told to do, and then the point of that buffer never is really seen. So my recommendation was no more than 30% be planted. It reaches 20 foot, a minimum of 20 foot at the age of maturity. And once that vegetative buffer has reached maturity, it just creates one solid, visual screening effect. Really, we're only looking for a 1 row, 10 foot wide, which would just be 1 row of trees planted on that western property line. Also, at the front of the poultry house, it don't come any closer than 130 foot. I think it's around 127 foot is what he has it proposed at. By the time you plant that buffer, you plant it far enough off the property line that it's not going to encroach on the property line, and you have enough area for a loadout area for trucks and that sort of thing. I think 130 foot will work. I think that's a reasonable number. But like I said, there was a few differences between the planning commission and the planning staff's recommendation. So I'll let y'all decide what the best course of action will be, but that's why there was the differences on that.
Yes, I think we definitely need to agree on what direction we're going.
Right.
Unless I get an objection, why don't we go with your recommendation, a third of each?
Okay.
Commissioners, y'all got any questions to ask Mr. No questions.
I would, and also the size of the tree. Y'all are okay with the 2.5 inch caliper? Is that was?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
How about you, Ed? Fine.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that presentation. So we'll move forward then, and we'll
Okay.
we'll deal with that particular item that's on our list.
All right.
So you want to make the recommendation clear to us again? So
So my recommendation is that there be a vegetative buffer planted along the western property line. The trees reach 20 foot at age of maturity, a minimum of 20 foot at age of maturity. It creates a solid visual buffer, and they're planted a minimum of 2 inches in caliber when they're planted, and that no more than 30% of that buffer is of one species.
Thank you, appreciate that.
Two or 2.5?
2.5.
Okay, yeah, because that's what.
I don't know
all
what
right.
it said. 2.5 is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We have the recommendation. Do I have a motion we accept this recommendation?
Make a motion that we accept our planning zoning director's proposal to the specifics that he's presented to us as it enhances what the planning and zoning board has already submitted.
Thank you, Commissioner Swales makes that motion. Have a second.
I second.
Mr. Chairman.
We got 2 seconds. Let's take Mr. Franklin down here to the left as the second. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Vote. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
We will move to the second request here in the variance of the side yard setback that we heard in the planning meeting a while ago. You want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Right, so Mr. Gilbert pretty well covered it. We heard this one at the May 14th Planning Commission as well. It's 5 acre tract, 5 separate houses. The company that he's representing is wanting to cut it up into 5 different 1 acre lots. I went and did a site visit. The property's it's investment property. It's rental properties for the owners, but the properties are very well maintained. I don't see any issues with approving it, the 5 foot variance at all. My recommendation is to go ahead and approve that.
Yes, any commissioners got any questions about that? Item 2. All right, you heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion we accept?
I move that we accept the request for the variance, approve the request for the variance as presented.
Thank you. Dr. Michelson makes a motion. Do we accept that? Second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Wester. Seconds that motion. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
That's the public hearing items has been dealt with. Now we'll move into public works, and we have several items here. First is the water system improvement project by the GFA line extension. And we discussed this the other night at the work session, but I'm gonna ask Ms. Thomas if you'll give us a very overview of that, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, I ask that the board consider and approve the recommendation and award the lowest bid submitted by Arrowwood General Contracting in the amount of $571,493.30. This project consists of installing water main on Shackelford Road, Arlen Williams Road, Keller Road, and Williams Bridge Road, and will be funded through our GFA Water Systems Improvement Project Loan Grant and ARC. We still have a little bit of our ARC funds left.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for presenting that to us. That's one of our objectives, to try to expand water throughout the county. Do I have a motion we accept the water system improvement?
I make a motion that we accept the water extension improvement.
Thank you, Commissioner West. Franklin makes that motion. Have a second.
I second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Michelson. Seconds that motion. Do we have any other discussion, gentlemen, before we vote on it? Hearing none, all in favor? 5-0 vote, that is approved. Now, I understand we've been having a little difficulty with sewage. I got a brother that's been a long time mayor in the state of Georgia, and when he heard we was trying to expand sewage in Franklin County, he said, don't get in the sewage business because it is a pit hole. I don't know if Mr. Jordan can verify that or not, but you spend a lot of money on sewage, but you have to do it because it's good for the citizens. And so that's what we've been doing, and we'll address that issue. Ms. Thomas?
Thank Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, I ask the board to consider the recommendation that was presented at the work session and award the bid for a lime slurry feed system to Burnett Lime Company in the amount of $147,600. This is a very specialized service, as we spoke about, and the sole provider and bidder was submitted by this company. And furthermore, the project will be funded through our SPLOST 5 funds allocated to water and utilities.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Thomas on that project? Do we have a motion to move forward with this project?
I'll make a motion that we move forward with the lime slurry injection process for our sewer system.
Thank you, Commissioner West, for making that motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioner Swales, make a second on that. Any other discussion, Jim? All in favor, signify. We got a 5-0 vote to move forward with that. Thank you very much. So we talked also about the public defender and the government agreement. I believe we got a slight increase from what we had. We talked about that at a work session the other night. So Ms. Thomas, tell us about this intergovernmental agreement with the public defender.
Yeah, annually, the 5 counties of the Northern Judicial, the 5 counties of the Northern Judicial Circuit enters into an indigent defense agreement every year. This agreement is provided by the public defender to our county attorney, who then sends it in to us. The FY21 agreement shows an annual increase of only $521 for the year. Of course, our expense is prorated based on the number of cases in the circuit. Tonight, I ask the board that they consider the resolution that was presented at the work session, which approves the indigent defense agreement for fiscal year 21.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. All right, so we got a recommended to go ahead and approve this increase of $521. Do I have a motion with that?
I move that we accept the intergovernmental agreement for the Public Defender's Office.
Dr. Maxwell makes a motion that we accept that. Do I have a second?
I'd like to second.
Thank you. Mr. Swales seconds that motion. Any discussion about that, gentlemen? Hearing none, all in favor? We got a 5-0 vote to move forward with that intergovernmental agreement there. Now, distribution of the Gateway Industrial Park taxes, as that came about many years ago and so forth, it was formulated how that percentage, since this is mostly located in Hart County, but we get just a percentage, and the way the percentage was broken down, if I understand it, it was the amount of money that the Franklin County Commissioners injected into the Parkway in relationship of the amount that Hart County was putting in, and I believe it was something on about 9% investment, so to speak. But I'm gonna let Ms. Thomas talk about that and bring us up to date on the distribution of Gateway Industrial Park taxes. Ms. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this agreement dates back before I was even eligible to vote in a presidential election. So it dates back a while, and we had to pull it from the files. There was an intergovernmental agreement that was entered into by Franklin and Hart County that it purchased land and established the Gateway Park. In the document, it reads that as a general principle, Hart County shall bear 75% of the cost of the acquisition, and Franklin County shall bear 25%. Of course, since this time in the initial investment, there has been additional investment by both parties. The document further states that Hart County shall be the lead in this investment, and that each county shall be entitled to a share of the ad valorem taxes and other taxes payable by the any tenant of the Gateway Park in an amount equal to the percentage of investment by that county. Back in 2015, Franklin County received the first check, and there was a little bit of question as to what happened or where it goes, and the agreement is actually silent on what happens to the money once it comes to Franklin County. Once Hart County collects it and they give us our percentage, it's silent. But we have collected several checks, and I have verified it with the check register from the Hart County Tax Commissioner. I had asked them to provide me a check register of all checks cut so I could validate our amount. And I went back and calculated all of the millage rates for those years and determined an allocation. So while this agreement is silent on how we split it amongst our taxing authorities in the county, my recommendation to you guys was to allocate it accordingly. So I went back and calculated each year, and then of the $129,000, 477.77 that we've received, my recommendation is that we cut a check to the school system in an amount of $80,608.67 into the IDA for $1,154.29. This will get us everything that's been collected thus far. The taxes for 17, 18, and 19 have not been distributed to us. However, this agreement does state that at any point in time, we could request that distribution, which is currently, like you mentioned, 91% Hart County investment into the Gateway Park and only 9% Franklin County investment. But we can have that reassessed, and maybe that's a good idea once we make this and true it up before they make the next distribution request. There's a lot of chatter, so we'll figure out what is it, according to this agreement that's in place right now, should be the amounts that are given. Furthermore, I also asked the board to approve this payment and then authorize me to work with the attorney to determine whether or not an intergovernmental agreement between all the taxing authorities in Franklin County would be, or the ones that's applicable to this part. Let me clarify that. We can determine what's the best allocation method. And that way there's no question for somebody that comes in well after me or shortly after, whatever the situation may be, there's no question as to how this money's supposed to be split since the original agreement is silent.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Thomas?
I talked to the tax commissioner this afternoon. I think he has some information to share that's pertinent to how to break it apart.
I didn't hear the state mentioned in that disbursement. The state did have, they had a millage rate through the year 2015. Those taxes are somewhat, some of that is prior to 2015. I don't think we're dispersing to the state. Also, the first check was in 2012, not 2015.
So would that would change how we break it apart, maybe?
Actually, the state part was supposedly, according to the documents I got from Hart County, the state's amount was submitted to the state by Hart County before they gave us the distribution. So, and if that's not the case, then we can verify that with Hart County. That's just what these notes said, is that the state, it would be given to the state first. So if we owe some different amounts, we can recalculate it. But according to this, they paid the state amount. On the 12 one, I don't know, that was before me, that would be good. I've got their check register. Their check register matches up with the dates that I have. So if they distributed something, maybe they have a newer tax system, you might know that better than I would, if they had a different tax system in 12. But as of right now, my amounts were calculated based on this check register that they provided.
What is the first year of collections that you're showing?
They go back to 2009.
It goes back to 2007, so you're missing.
And if that's the case, again, we have to go to Hart County. I can only, I verified it against what Hart County said that they gave us. I can't make up money, but I'll be happy to go back to them and say, maybe you can meet with me and the tax commissioner. I know she's new. We can sit down and say, okay, here's the check register you gave me. Here's the money I've received. You're saying there's something outside of there. Now, there was tax abatements. So these taxes on these two entities did not start until 2009. So it's my understanding, based on these notes, there were tax abatements for those first few years that they were in there.
I have a copy of the check from 2012.
Okay, good. Well, and then we can check with their check register and ask why it's not on the check register.
All right, so what we have before us tonight is what you presented, but we will authorize you please working with our tax commissioner, Hart County's tax commissioner, and Bubba, and we'll go from there. Do we have any questions for Ms. Thomas?
I have a concern, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
I have a concern.
Come on up, Mr. Martin.
I don't believe this board is authorized to collect and disperse ad valorem taxes. Now, I may be wrong, the attorney sitting here, but it says in that agreement, this is ad valorem taxes. I mean, I heard that read earlier, as did you. don't think you are authorized to distribute those funds.
In other words, they should go directly to the tax commission. He should-
Absolutely, you got the sales tax rollback, there's many different things, including the state's portion of these funds that needs to be dealt with, and it needs to be done through our tax accounting software. That's just,
And I agree with that, because I would like to get it out of our hands. I know when I wrote the letter back in 2015 and copied you on it and said, hey, I know Hart County's trying to get it off their books, just give it to me, I'll hold it in that way, because we didn't know, and we had asked, okay, attorney, let's look at it, but I would love to get us out of the mix. And even if it makes Mr. Martin happy for me to give you the money and then turn around and distribute it,
I
that
think
would
the
be
proper
great.
way to do this, and I wasn't aware of it till Mr. Jordan called me today and said, look, this is coming up. And then I talked to Dr. Matheson. I think the proper thing to do would be pay that money over to the tax office. We set up a tax bill and distribute the funds the way that the Constitution intended that to happen. That's,
Absolutely, we'll do it correctly, attorney. In fact, that's the preference from the county's standpoint, and I thought it probably needed to be handled. Any comments, Bob?
Not until I've read the agreement, but certainly I'm happy to work with the county manager, the tax.
So if
commissioner
we
to resolve
turn
it.
that over to your office, you can handle it, is that correct?
yes, and then we need to pick up those earlier years as well.
I'm sorry.
I think we need to pick up those earlier years that are involved as well, Mr. Bridges.
Absolutely. This sounds like a easy fix if we just turn it over to Mr. Martin and deal directly to the tax commissioner in Hart County.
I would just like this board, and he's right, we may not be able to tax, ad valorem tax, but before I cut the check back over to him, it would be nice to document, I don't think that's unfair to ask you guys to document that allows me to release those funds. I will also need, that's in the budget adjustments as well, so, because it's sitting in our reserve so that it can go to, Mr. Martin and go back to, Lisa says 09, so you said it goes back to 7.
So that 2012 check, did that come to you or did that come to the county?
The check was made out to Franklin County Tax Commissioner.
Okay.
It came to me by way of Lynn Allen, and Lynn said, Billy wants you to hold this until he figures out how it gets distributed.
So it's separate from what we have now.
It's the same, it's the same monies.
Right.
Yes,
But not the
It's
total
not-
she
yeah,
has.
It wasn't deposited in our
Okay.
account, right? It was
Yes, it
taken-
was. Billy deposited it to the county account. That was in 2012.
Okay, so, legal attorney, would it be appropriate us as vote to let the tax commissioner handle it?
Well, sounds like there's some question as to exactly what amount we're talking about, right?
Well, I'd have to pull 2012, you can help gather the month, then I can go back and pull the green bars,
The check was in March.
and then we'll have to verify with Hart County, why doesn't their check register reflect it? And it could be a different system, because
Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
So we'll just print it back to the commissioner. And for documentation, why don't we just make a motion, if it's appropriate, to send that to the commissioner, let the tax commissioner handle Franklin counties, and it'll show that we're lying at, well, it's legal, that's just what we should do. We have a motion?
We're motioning, we're not basing it on a specific amount. We can just say the funds in the gateway
Yes,
distribution account.
Yeah.
And then, will you withhold commissions on that? That will actually reduce the amount that the
Yes.
systems will give.
Commissions would be withheld, because we would treat it as any other tax bill. What we will do is take the amount of money that was dispersed from Franklin County, work that into a value, enter it as a tax bill, and distribute it. So yes, we would withhold commissions.
Okay, so that actually will reduce the amount that we pay out to the school and the IBA for all those years, and the state, because you withhold
We don't
for the
withhold
state.
commissions, I don't believe, from the IBA, but. we
Just
do.
the school and the state.
So it's good, so we're not talking about a certain amount of money, just when it works out and so forth. You making a motion there?
I will. I'll make a motion that the county send the money that we have in the Gateway Industrial Park account to the tax commissioner to allocate and disperse as he should.
I would need any documentation that shows what years
and provide him with all the
Yeah, I'll
documentation.
provide that. There is a $2,000 discrepancy. They gave us $2,000 more than what their documents held, but I made sure to account for it and treat it as if, you know, I didn't want any missing money, so I put it in there to make sure it matched their check register.
Appreciate that input there, Ms. Martin. Have a second to that motion.
I'll second.
Ms. Swales seconds that motion. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0 to go that direction with it. We appreciate your guidance there, Mr. Martin. All right, we move down next. We have a visit tonight. Welcome. Mayor Jordan is with us from Royston. Yes, sir.
Hey, I'm gonna go ahead and take this mask off. I'm through.
Yes, sir. Please do.
N95, it's hot.
Please do.
I want to thank the tax commission for coming in. He stole my thunder. I think the big concern I have is one, called the tax commissioner of Hart County today, and they're not really aware. They like a copy of that agreement because no one over there has a copy readily defined what the agreement is between them and Gateway Park. My recommendation, my request tonight is one, that there be a complete look back to, I think it was 2007 or 2009, on all the transactions that have taken place. Because the issue is that, has that money been distributed? The next question I have for you guys is, you need to think about how this is handled, why this has taken so long for this to be distributed. It should have been distributed years ago. The next question is, there's approximately 3 years, I think 3 years, that have been uncollected. So my suggestion was to turn this over to the tax commissioner, let the tax commissioner go back and do a complete check on this, audit, and then set up and establish a way to collect those taxes so that we're not waiting 10 years before the money's distributed. I think that really is inappropriate. I think it's improper, and it should have been handled a different way a long time ago. I'll leave that up to your internal counsel on that, but I think there's a whole issue involved with this. The other issue is the state money, is the state received their portion of it? And that may need to be determined. I don't know that it has. That was one issue on it, so I think it's been pretty much resolved. The second issue, and it's not on the list on the agenda, was the issue about the SPLOST allocation. And we've had conversations, the city of Royston and the county manager and our city manager have conversations about the way that the SPLOST allocation is distributed. And the concern I have is that the cities are funding the sinking fund for the county, and we have not borrowed any monies whatsoever. And we're having to wait until the county replenishes its sinking fund so that the bondholders are satisfied. And at this point, we're not party to that. We're not privy, and we don't need to be involved with funding that because it's using the city money in a wrong, we think a wrongful way. And so I would like the commissioners to take a look at that and get with us and discuss that in the future, because I don't know if you've borrowed anything else right now, or you're borrowing, or looking, bonding out any balances on the SPLOST, which we're totally against in the beginning. We can see what's happening to the economy now, and why it's so dangerous to use SPLOST and borrow such money when the economy can tank in a month. And I'm not saying that it has completely tanked, it seems to be reviving pretty well. But you look at the dangerous nature of depending on SPLOST all the time to fund all these capital expansions and capital purchases. We didn't borrow, we don't want to borrow, and we don't want our funds being withheld, but to pay off bonds for the county. I appreciate your time. Thank you for letting me speak.
Appreciate that, Mayor. So we could actually have your legal person in Royston help with that, or will I turn?
I can provide a little bit. I wasn't aware that this was on the agenda, so I didn't come in with my SPLOST numbers, but our initial borrowing repayment is over with. The sinking fund is there's nothing else. This was the last year of that. I do it according to the state law, but I'll be happy. I give it to your auditors. I'll be happy to give you the agreement on it, but the spreadsheet that I use for allocation goes to the auditors every year. We have not borrowed any more money, and I'm glad you put it on the agenda because now I can give the update. We did get our SPLOST money in, and while March, the point of sales collections had not, the pandemic had not hit it fully, I am happy to say that this month's collections is the exact same level as the last 12 months, the last fiscal year, and the last 18 months. So I'm hopeful that April will see a small dip, and then, like you said, it's already reviving, so some good outlook on SPLOST. But the last of the debt service payments. The hospital part has nothing to do with Royston's allocation at all. It was just the initial borrowing. And that debt service payment, it was only, I'll make my last payment. The debt service sinking fund is already full. I'll make that last payment in July.
I guess my concern on that is if the county goes and borrows any more funds against that and bonds that out, if we're gonna be wind up having to use our money to replenish that sinking fund, and they get paid back 6-8 months later, when we're sitting there until that's replenished, when we didn't partake of any bonds whatsoever, because we just don't wanna get into the debt business.
Thank you.
We'll just do it according to law.
Yeah.
Can I ask you? You said the SPOS money was that for April? You said came in that we're waiting
well,
on.
No, it's May's. What we receive in May is actually March's.
Okay,
point of
so
sale.
March.
So if you buy a Coke in March, then that vendor pays the state in April, and then the state pays us in May.
In May, okay.
So what I got last Friday or so, when the bank statements came through, was $336,000, and our right at $337,000. What our last 12 months has been running $336, and I just emailed you guys that right before we headed into this meeting, so you'll be able to see those trends.
Doesn't the agreement though say that as soon as those funds hit your account, you're supposed to disperse them?
It says you have to take care of the sinking fund first,
I'm talking about.
and then you
after
have
that.
so many days.
Yeah.
So I got it on Friday, Mr. Mayor, we don't sign checks, I have it, within the next check run, the checks are cut to you. And I'll be happy to send you the date that we receive it and all the date check register. Matter of fact, I send it to your auditors every year, the entire check register for the dates.
It seems to run about a month behind.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, that's just what our record shows.
No, I'll, if you'll want to come up to my office tonight, I'll pull it all up, I'll be happy to.
That's the way to handle this. I'll have Mr. Andrews and Beth and you and who else and solve these issues. I appreciate you coming tonight. All right, let's move to the next item here is the board appointments update. We're looking at several appointments that we need to make in the coming future and so forth. And I just wanted, on the appointment updates, Ms. Thomas, I think you mailed them out to us today, did you not?
I did, and I've shuffled my papers, so, I got one, application in around 1 o'clock this afternoon, so I re-updated that list. Gina and I sat down this morning, went through everything that was in the file, so you have the record, of greater than a year, but we always say that we leave the applications on file for a year. That has been given to you guys. I also emailed you the update from the library board and the DFACS board. They'll have appointments coming up in June. So those chair or those directors have been made aware. We will need some people for the library board. She believes that these two people's terms, they must take a term away before they can be reappointed. She's gonna verify that. So anybody interested in the library board, which we don't have specific applications for from people, please encourage them to apply before the end of this month. Likewise, on the DFACS board, he is going to reach out to the current serving member to see if they are still interested and have them refill out an application.
Actually, this is on our web page, I believe. And I believe we've advertised it also in the paper with Shane about these appointments. So be in touch with that. A couple of appointments is concerning the airport. And both our appointees that we have over at the airport right now is coming up the end of this month. It was brought to our attention, a couple of weeks ago when I got a call from the GBI, was the GBI was gonna do some checking at the airport about appointments. And then it came to our attention from our attorney a little more in detail about the legislation. I'm gonna ask Bubba to please explain it to all of us together while we're here together.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Everybody hear me okay? I apologize for the bandit mask. I officiated a wedding in Indiana this weekend, and so the mask is for your protection, not mine. I was in contact with lots of people that I don't know they're where they've been. we also held court in Franklin Springs at 4 o'clock this afternoon for the first time since all the emergency orders. And so that explains my mass. We received information from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation that there's an open investigation into the financial dealings of the Hart-Franklin Airport Authority and the conflict of interest issues, particularly regarding hangar leases owned by members of the Airport Authority Board, including Franklin County Board of Commissioners appointee who serves as the chairman. I provided you with a detailed legal opinion on that issue. I cited the relevant cases back to 1878 on the issue and the Attorney General's opinions, and as well as the provision of the Georgia Constitution that sets forth the law. According to the GBI, and I think as stated in my memo to you, the law could not be clearer, and they expressed some concern that no action had been taken previously. I explained to them, well, the terms are about to be up for appointment. Historical research indicates that the term of office of both of Franklin County's Board of Commissioners appointments actually expires today. And therefore, based upon all of that, my research and that conversation, it's my recommendation to proceed with consideration of new appointees immediately.
So we're talking in terms of one appointee. We only control 2 appointees to the airport authority. For the ones that are not familiar with the situation, the commission appoints 2, Hart County Commission appoints 2, IBA from each county appoints 1, and then within the 6 people, they appoint 1 person. And what is our attorney is referring to here, up until last year when we had and replaced Mr. Addison, I believe, in that position, we wasn't real understanding, I guess, of the legislation, and we actually did what the GBI seem to think, plus you seem to think, is inappropriate.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
No, you're saying the GBI has already told you that it was inappropriate, or they're investigating it because some are saying that it's inappropriate?
Well, what I can tell you from my conversation with the GBI is the investigator said the law could not be clearer. Why hasn't Franklin County removed this guy before now?
My next question is, these laws or bylaws, or is that a state level issue, or is this something that when this authority was created, the commissioners at that time said this based on some sort of template? Or, well, I guess what I'm asking is to what level is this law? Is this amendable by us?
It is local legislation enacted by the General Assembly. It is, under the home rule provision, amendable by the Board of Commissioners under some circumstances. I'd be happy to research the ability of the board to do that. But typically, the local legislation passed by the General Assembly is revised by the General Assembly.
Actually, in talking to our state representative, Alan Powell, I asked him outright, looking into this. He said it had to be coming from the state legislation. Is that correct?
This is joint authority.
Sir?
Sir, relax.
That's directly legislation put by the law that we must provide with.
Yeah, absolutely. This is enacted by the Georgia General Assembly.
Right.
The county board of commissioners did not enact the law that created the Franklin Hart Airport Authority.
Is this a common setup across the state? Because I reached out, that there's a Georgia Airports Association, and I called several people, in this area and around the state, and I got a variety of answers, but the consensus was that it was a pretty common practice for pilot tenants to serve on authorities and commissions. So it just seems like to me there's a lot of disagreement, depends on who you ask, as to whether or not that might represent outright. And I understand what you gave us, and I respect that. But it just seems like there's a lot of disagreement about what, is that a conflict of interest? Is that something that would be appropriate to ask the Attorney General to give an opinion on?
Well, the Attorney General has given an opinion
On this specific case? Because it happens all over the state.
Commissioner,
I understand.
My opinion is not the first opinion or second.
Oh,
opinion
I know, but I'm just saying there's a lot of, if we did that, and if Hart County did that, that would totally break apart the airport authority, because half of the members are pilot tenants.
Well,
And-
they very well do that, but the law
Yeah.
is what it is, and you have control over what you have control over.
Right.
That's your two appointments.
But you did say it is amendable. If we discuss with Hart County and come to some sort of different agreement, we can make any adjustments to that?
The General Assembly can.
Okay.
Yeah, General Assembly has to do that. So what I'm picking up, we're breaking the law. Is that what you gathered from the GBI?
Well,
Let's not be so harsh.
I think it was very concerning to the GBI investigator that I spoke with that the issue has been known and not dealt with.
Do they have some sort of timeline for their investigation?
I don't know.
Just wonder if it would be appropriate to wait and let them render a final verdict and then act on it.
The appointments, you have a vacancy today.
Well, they can serve though until their appointment expires. We did that for 20 years with several members, or for a long period of time.
Right. Harris Little,
So-
who you replaced.
He was
didn't
on
have
there
a
for,
lease.
yeah, he was on there for about, but I'm just saying, as far as appointments go, I'm not talking about whether they're a pilot tenant or not.
Right, but, the question was about what the Georgia Bureau of Investigation was going to do, and their investigation, which has to do with an existing conflict of interest.
Is that what did they tell us what all they're investigating, or is it primarily that?
That was the purpose of this call to me.
Okay.
So we don't know when the GBI will finish the investigation, but what I'm picking up from you is the fact that the legislation, according to what you sent us, is actually a conflict of interest. And one of the major things that might have come to our attention was the hangar switch, swapping a private hangar for a public hangar. And I think that might have come to our attention. Now, we only dealing with one person that's not lined up according to legislation. I don't want to.
Have we had any discussions with Hart County whatsoever about this?
Absolutely.
Because I've talked to their chairman and another commissioner, and apparently we are nowhere close to the same page. And I've asked you, Mr. Chairman, about us having some communication with Hart County so that we're all on the same page. I think it looks bad that we can't even get on the same page with a county that we're sharing this with. But yet we're jumping into this, and we haven't even had discussions with a county that has a part of this with us.
Well, you bring up a good point, but actually I've discussed extensively with the chairperson of Hart County.
I have too.
And I've talked to him, and also his attorney was part of the conversation and so forth. So there have been interaction going on between me and the elder. Now, as far as what I'm hearing, it was suggested that commissioners sit down together and solve the issue. I'm suggesting if the legislation cannot be changed by the commissioner, ain't no way we can come up with an agreement to make it correct without the proper legislation. Now, we handle it through the GBI and let them determine. And as I discussed with all of you guys, when Bubba rendered that decision, with the exception of one, basically, I think the response was, let's let the GBI decide what's going on. And so, if the GBI has already spoke to Bubba and is concerned about it.
But the GBI ain't rendered a verdict, though.
Pardon?
The GBI ain't rendered a verdict, and we're talking about jumping into something that no verdict has been even rendered yet.
Okay.
They're giving you what it looks like to them.
Right.
And I don't understand what the big deal is about us sitting down with Hart County. I mean, Hart County's chairman told me he has set it up with Representative Alan Powell for both boards of commissioners to meet, and Representative Powell lead the meeting so that both boards can get on the same page about how we need to handle this.
Well,
And I don't understand where the issue is with that, with not wanting to meet with another county.
I would be in
That's gotta
favor of
wait a
that
minute,
before we
wait a
make a
minute.
decision.
I talked to Joy, and I also talked to Alan Powell. And Alan Powell told me outright, ain't nothing we can do, it needs to go to the legislation about this. So, I take
Well,
Alan Powell's word for it.
Well, I guess Chairman Dorsey from Hart County is telling me a different thing than what he's telling you then, because that's not what he told me.
It must be.
And I told him I would gladly sit down with Hart County and discuss it with them and see how we could get on the same page.
I thought you and somebody else on our board has already went over there.
Yeah, I spoke with him.
No, we got invited to the airport authority. We didn't
Oh,
go speak-
airport
we didn't go
authority,
speak with
what
Hart
kind of
County.
meeting did y'all go to?
We sat down with the chairman, the vice chairman, and a commissioner from Hart County.
And y'all discussed this issue?
The hangar swap was brought up, yeah. It was brought up by Vice Chairman Mike Ward.
That was a general invitation to anyone. Y'all would have all received the same email. I guess my question, or my feelings on this, hopefully we want the best people in these positions, and I don't know if the two current people are the best. I've served on other authorities, and I don't understand the idea of conflict of interest. For instance, I served on Royston's Downtown Development Authority for a long time. It's encouraged for business owners, people that own buildings and businesses in Royston, to serve on that authority because they know what's going on. They have a vested interest in that authority succeeding and other businesses succeeding. So to me, this idea of paying money to rent a hangar, if y'all know what the cost is of owning an airplane and what goes into that, you are vested in that airport authority. They spend their own money to clear those runways, to keep brush clear, to, make sure the fuel pumps are working. They spend thousands of their own dollars so that our community can have an airport that hopefully will attract businesses. That's the big deal, okay? So I respect the law. All I'm saying is let's not jump into making decisions about this until we know more from the GBI. And let's reach out to Alan Powell, because he's the guy at that level that has something to say about it. And he's talked to them, and he's talked to you.
Talked to him
Did you talk to him?
several times.
And to me, it doesn't seem like it's too far off for them to make some adjustments at that level if they decide that it makes sense. I'm not necessarily saying we go ahead and vote to approve someone,
Oh,
but
no.
communication is very valuable. Let's talk to Hart County. Let's talk to Alan Powell. What's it going to hurt for us to communicate a little bit better?
Well, actually, communication's been going on sometimes now.
Well, individually, there has been.
I thought that was a group of y'all talking to authority.
No, it did not.
The only time I had talked with the authorities when I went with Commissioner Swells when we received the invitation to go.
And we
That's
didn't
the only
speak to
time.
But that wasn't an authority meeting, right?
No,
You only
it
had
was
two
not an
authority
authority
people
meeting.
there.
There was not an authority meeting, no.
Okay. I want us to follow the law. I'm just not certain because the research I did, this is a widespread practice. And so if it's wrong, you're looking at affecting a lot of airport authorities across the state, not just ours. And you're looking at removing effectively half of the authority. And if that's what we have to do, I guess that's what we have to do. But I think it would be a good idea because Hart County as a joint, controlling member, I guess, of this authority, they ought to have the same qualifications for members as we do. It doesn't make any sense. So we ought to at least talk about that issue, I think, with them.
All right. I honor what y'all saying. Appreciate what your views is, and I'm gonna give my view. My view is simple fact that we got a highly intelligent attorney that looked intensively and submitted to us what I read is conflict of interest. So I trust our attorney, so to speak. And this is another way I look at it. When you got a person, for instance, that wants to have a plane and a hangar, and those people determine how much rent they're going to have to pay for that hangar. Common sense to me tells me those people that's got the hangar that can set the rent might not. I'm not saying they're not, but it puts them in an awkward position for them to determine their own rent. And for them to be in a position where they control, actually where they can switch hangars that's from a public hangar. My experience as an educator, superintendent of schools, and in this position, you advertise a public facility. You take bids on that public facility. You analyze those bids, and then you make a decision whether you want to accept those bids. But when you're on authority and you decide without doing those items to go ahead and make the switch on some ecological situation, I hadn't been educated that way, and I'm anxious to see how the GBI interprets what's going on here. I trust our attorney, legally advisors. I honor everybody's opinion, but my opinion is reading it from an attorney trained person. I can read the legislation and I can see the conflict of interest right there, plain as day. So what we'll do is we wasn't going to try to remove somebody or replace somebody tonight. We just want to get it out in the open in what direction to go. We're not sure how long the GBI investigation will go. We'll just see where it goes from there. In the meantime, I've talked to Alan Powell. He tells me outright, he can't change a thing until the legislation next year. That tells me I'm not all set on this commission knowing that we're going to get legislation waiting for a year from now. Of course, most of you know that I didn't announce for another term, so but I don't want to sit here and be breaking the law from now to December either. So we will study this issue, look into this issue. I'll have more conversations with Alan, also the Hart County chairman, which I've had several times, and making sure that we communicate each other's opinion. Now, apparently, we'd only had a person with a conflict of interest for this last year, because we appointed a person with a plane last year about this time. Apparently, what I'm discovering, Hart County had a person on there a long time. I believe at least 16 years or longer. They've had a person with a plane and a hangar.
Has this issue ever, about a conflict, has it ever come up prior to this year?
I don't think it's ever come up. In fact, I was blown away. it didn't dawn on me until we started having chaos. Once we had chaos going on, that brought it to my attention. I call chaos is the fact that some things that I just disagree with it, the way I was viewing the situation. So that's what come to our attention. And I think I've heard some of the other commissioners say that's been on it longer. It didn't occur to y'all to this situation came up.
I have a question. When the GBI, when they conclude their investigation, I mean, and they determine that's a conflict of interest, do they have the authority to order any pilot tenants to be removed from the authority?
They have the authority to refer the case to the district attorney for prosecution.
Because they're serving, or?
Because it's arguably a crime.
But what would how would that work? Explain how that would work. I mean, I don't understand exactly how that would work. What?
I mean, I'm not trying to be obtuse. I don't.
So they would say they would take him, refer, for example, that particular person to the district attorney, or would they refer the board and say the board has improperly appointed somebody to that, or the airport authority?
Would refer a criminal case to the district attorney to decide whether or not he wanted to present it to the grand jury. I mean, there are, and I cited them for you. I mean, there are actual felonies that are implicated by it. I know it sounds
By them serving.
Yes.
Okay.
By the existence of the conflict of interest. And let me tell you this: you don't need to look to the GBI to determine whether or not it is a conflict of interest. I mean, it is.
Right, I'm not. You just said earlier that he had said to you that he's concerned that person is still serving because he thinks it's a conflict of interest. So that's why I brought that up. I wondered what actual authority they have, but they would refer the matter to the district attorney. Okay, all right, that's what I want to know.
Well, actually, once I feel like that you pointed out that we are breaking the law by having that person on there. I guess my question would be, simple fact, once it's brought to our attention and we don't take no action, I got a gut feeling, so to speak, that the GBI could be charging us knowledgeable of the law and not following the law. Am I correct on that?
I think the way it was put to me was it is suspicious that this hasn't been handled already. I mean, I've said that a couple of times.
Is he addressing that with Hart County as well? Because they have 3 pilot tenants that are serving. I believe. I'm sorry, 2. I'm sorry, 2.
Capacity as Franklin County attorney,
all right.
with regard to this issue.
Right.
You know, I mean, at this point, I just want to make it very clear. I mean,
Well, can we ask the Attorney General on this specific case to give an opinion, because his opinion would be binding to us, and that would be the end of the matter. His opinion is binding to cities and counties. I mean, local governments, as I understand it.
I don't believe you do that.
The Attorney General.
Well, you can request an official opinion of the Attorney General.
You'd request him to do that.
I mean, that would give us. I think if he says that, that's our.
I mean, it's an
It's
opinion.
not. You're asking my opinion?
No.
You looked at me and said that.
You said that's not binding. So I guess you're
Yeah,
interjecting.
I don't think it's binding, because
Okay.
it's just an opinion if the state wants to.
I know you're a learned attorney, been practicing for how long?
It's not relevant.
Sure it is. You're asking this board to listen to
I've
you.
been serving in government for 20-something years.
How long have you been practicing law?
30.
All right.
So,
And you want to get into argument, we'll talk
well,
about that.
let's don't get in an argument, Mayor. We hired him as our attorney, and I'm gonna go on record saying that I'd like to follow our attorney's recommendation. I don't want it said a month from now, Thomas Bridges, you knew about this legislation. I'm voicing my opinion, please put it in the minutes, that we need to deal with this situation. And so be it, we'll let the GBI decide, but I'll be clearing Thomas Bridges' name. Any other discussion on this, gentlemen?
Yes, sir. By that same token, I have told you that it is a conflict of interest. I have told you that you have a vacancy in the position, and along that same line, what the chairman just said, by not taking action to replace him tonight, you are making an affirmative decision to allow him to continue to serve for at least another month, or until you appoint a replacement. And that is contrary to my opinion and my advice, and I just needed to state that for the record.
I have a question. Who do we have that's applied for the position, or how many?
There's ones that's applied specifically for that, and then there's some that leave it open that they'll be willing to serve. So in the last 12 months, Jennifer, you want me to name it out loud? Jennifer Renzetti, she asked to be on the JDA, but said that she'd be willing to serve with others with no preference. Carolee Coker applied for the planning, of which she was appointed to the planning commission, but she did state that she would serve other boards with no preference. Courtney Ummenhep applied for JDA with no other positions desired. Alan Bryant for recreation with no other. Andy Myers, recreations, and a maybe for other boards. Eddie Wayne Grizzle, tax assessor, for which he was appointed, and no other ones. Boyd Sewell asked for planning, also was willing to serve on JDA, planning, and IBA. Mr. Addison applied for the airport with no interest in other boards. Johnny Cox applied for the airport with no interest in other boards. Sheila Brock applied for any position. Andrew Murphy applied for the JDA. He left his questionnaire blank on other positions desired. For a phone call, he is open, but I think that would require more conversation since he did leave it blank. Mr. Flowers has applied for the airport with no other positions desired.
Did the airport authority make any recommendations on anybody they wanted to see appointed?
That is in their minutes. I believe that they do, but we'd have to pull them off the internet to see.
Do we know if any of those are pilots? Is Mr. Cox a pilot?
He is.
Okay.
It's not an issue of whether or not they're a pilot.
I mean, I'm sorry, a pilot tenant. That's what I want to know.
That they're a tenant.
I'm sorry, I should have made that clear.
A contract, a financial contract. And I can't answer that. We do have a question on all of our applications that says, do you have any serious conflicts of interest by serving on this board, and ask that they disclose this information.
So essentially, we have a bunch of people other than one that don't know anything about aviation that are okay being on a board, an aviation board. I would have a hard time unless they have some sort of desire or they see a business, how they can translate the airport authority into, business relationships or helping businesses come to our area.
The way you, I see where you're coming from, Commissioner, and I have to agree with you. The way you keep from having conflict of interest is the fact that you have a free conflict of interest board. And all these people with planes and hangars and so forth that's interested in our airport keep doing what they're doing, with the exception of making the rules, regulations, and so forth that's conflict to them, like setting the rent. When money's missing out of the fuel fund, rather than saying we're gonna write it off, have a person to step up and say,
Hang on, where did you get that with the fuel fund?
excuse me. When that's happening, you don't write it off, you look into it. So, bottom line is the fact you can have people with hangars and planes to really keep doing what they're doing, but don't put those people in a conflict of interest that would jeopardize their future by doing something illegal. That's what I'm saying. I'm all for them people that got planes, and airplanes, to keep advising. We do that in all aspects of life. Have advisory boards, keep doing what you're doing, keep volunteering, because this is a volunteer situation. Keep volunteering what you're doing. And therefore, we'll go on record as follow Bubba's rule. Well, let me ask one question, Bubba. Could we remove the one that's in conflict tonight and not appoint somebody in place, because we need to study applications and so forth?
There is a provision for removal, and in my opinion, you cannot remove him under that provision.
You said both of the terms expire tonight, right?
Exactly.
So we have two
Removal is
vacancies.
really not an issue.
Okay.
But the provision in the law says that once appointed, you continue to serve until your successor is appointed and qualified.
Yeah, but no, if we discover there's a conflict of interest, did you just say we could take him off or not?
I think you need to appoint a successor.
I'm sorry.
He said we have to appoint a successor.
Appoint a successor to fill that position, okay. So, therefore, we don't have anybody prepared, look at the applications and so forth, so we'll just move forward, and therefore, we got the GBI investigation. We
But
got
according
our
to him, we
attorney.
need to take action tonight.
So,
According to him, we have no choice but to take action tonight.
take
We
action
can't
to
leave
do
him
what?
we can't leave him in place.
According to you, we can't leave it, okay. With that mask on, it's hard to hear you there, but,
I'm sorry.
well, I understand you do it, you follow the guidelines. I appreciate that. Being
Doing
a
it for
wet,
you, Chairman. I'm doing it for all of you.
I appreciate it. All right, so on the advice of our attorney, do I have a motion that we replace the one that has a plane at the airport? Do we just put him off tonight?
Well, we have to appoint
We have to
successors.
appoint someone. We
Oh,
can't
that's what
just-
I was thinking we had to do, and then you said you didn't have to.
No.
Because we
No, you
don't
said we
definitely
had to.
have, what we'll need to do is look at the applications. Okay. So we'll look at the applications.
So you said we had to take action tonight.
Well,
And we
What
can't
action?
remove him. Well, we can't remove him. We have to. The only action we can take is to appoint a successor, right? That's what you. Okay.
either
And you
appoint
said
or he
we
stays
needed to
on
do
until
that
we
tonight.
appoint.
if
Or
I was
we
on the
are
board of commissioners,
derelict in our
that's-
duty.
I would be making a motion to appoint somebody.
Okay. Can you give us a list of all again? I know you called them out.
Yeah, I can, and let me remind you, well, I shouldn't remind. My opinion, serving on the board just takes an interest in the community. It doesn't require a skill set. When I look at the airport, I think of economic development because I've hopped on planes in a company jet. Somebody else mentioned today the public safety aspect and how monitoring that. You know, we all take different views on it, so experience doesn't necessarily prevent you from doing a good job on the board. James McFarland, JDA, he did not want to put his application, or sorry, that was already expired. Jennifer Renzetti, Carolee Coker, who's currently appointed, Courtney Umbihant, currently appointed, Alan Bryant, Andy Myers, Eddie Wayne Grizzle, Boyd Sewell.
Did Mr. Sewell write down that he would serve in other areas? I guess that's what we would need to know.
He specifically listed, according to my notes, and I could pull up on the scan document, he specifically lists planning, JDA, and IBA. If you, I hate to do this to anybody that's not in attendance, but you could always appoint them and they can always resign. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that, it might not be best, but you could always appoint and people can resign. Eddie Addison, Johnny Cox, Sheila Brock, Andrew Murphy, Bill Flowers.
Is there any conflict with someone like Andrew Murphy? He is a city council member in Livonia of serving on this county board.
I will tell you my opinion, of course, that goes to the attorney. There's no influence from the city side. Now, if it was you guys and you have a financial, you pay money to the airport authority. I don't know. He is an elected person, but there's no relationship with a city government and this joint authority. But I would have to defer to Bubba on that.
Could Mr. Murphy be appointed, Bubba?
I don't know. I'm happy to do some research right now to try to find that. You know, as I've explained before in other areas, there is a constitutional prohibition against dual office holding, and the way we determine whether an office is considered an office for that analysis is by searching Attorney General's opinions as to whether or not an office is an office. My guess would be that it probably is an office for the purposes of that prohibition, so that, I mean, if you put me on the spot and I didn't give you an answer, my answer would be probably no, he cannot serve.
Okay.
Okay.
So go ahead one more time. Pick up from there. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay, and I've got a list that goes back to 18. I'll be happy to give you the list to 18. But in the last year, Jennifer Renzetti, Carolee Coker appointed, Courtney Umbihant appointed, Alan Bryant, Andy Myers, Eddie Wayne Grizzle appointed. And when I say appointed, that doesn't preclude them from being on multiple boards, but just
Okay.
let you know the action. Boyd Sewell, Eddie Addison, Johnny Cox, Sheila Brock, Andrew Murphy, Bill Flowers.
Did Cody Grizzle ever make an application? He had talked to me at one time. Do you recall his name ever being submitted for?
When we went through all the applications, both our emails, county clerk email,
You're talking about the magistrate judge?
Yeah.
So he couldn't serve though because he's an elected.
based on,
Yeah. So he wouldn't be able to.
did staff be appointed?
Well, let me ask you this question. You know, it's good to have communication from the airport to the commission. We're in charge of providing the funds that we can provide to the airport. Having good communications. If we got a volunteer that works for the county, that's employed by the county, has no conflict of interest with the airport, and that person that works with the county, but willing to step up and fill that role till we can solve this issue, therefore we would still have a representative. Therefore, we could let him resign or her resign anytime we want to. Is that permissible?
So just by virtue of being a county employee, that does not disqualify you from being appointed to the airport authority?
I would say this question's been raised before from my personal perspective. You know, we had the issue before with our clerk. I feel like that would be asking a county employee to serve two masters because you're going to put them over there and there are going to be times that's a totally autonomous authority where what they're doing over there is in conflict with their job. So I would not be in favor of appointing a county employee.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
My opinion, it'd be right reverse. It'd be a real plus for us to have a person on the board personally.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
When did we know this was gonna come up?
You talking about the
In
conflict,
this meeting
conflict of
tonight?
interest?
When did we know we were gonna bring this up to immediately appoint somebody?
Yeah, this feels like bait and switch to me.
That's my question, because I feel like 4 members on this board have been blindsided by this.
We talked to three of you about the conflict of interest previously, okay?
I'm not talking about that.
Okay,
I'm
what you're
asking,
saying
when
is-
did the decision come up that this was gonna come up in the meeting tonight and we were going to have to immediately appoint somebody without none of us being able to do our homework?
I don't think we need to move with making sure we don't move too quick. But this is a communication because we wanted to talk about, just like we did at the work session the other night, talk
But
about
now
who
we're
we had
being
appointed.
told we
We
have
have
to
to.
immediately appoint somebody.
Yeah, we came in here
And
with
we
the
have
understanding
not,
of.
we have not
that
been
we were just
able
getting
to
an update.
research the candidates that are on there.
Now, all of a sudden,
And
from
to
our
me,
attorney,
this
we're
is-
gonna be arrested by the GBI for not making the determination on this.
So if we can't determine a person without appointing a person and we don't have a person, then maybe the GBI will understand that,
Maybe they will.
right? Okay.
Your earlier statement, though, didn't sound like that was the case, that was an option. I mean, you put it pretty clear
I
that
totally
we're
agree.
derelict if we don't do something tonight. Is that
totally
correct?
agree.
I just want to make sure I understand you.
What I told you was if I was on the board, I would be making a motion to appoint a successor.
And we can't just remove him because his term's expired.
Correct.
Well, let's look and see if we got any possibilities down the road.
Well, this is extremely uncomfortable that we would leave this hanging now. Because we've been told that we're derelict, we're allowing a conflict of interest to continue if we don't act tonight. And I don't want to be in that position.
I saw look at that too, Dr. Maxwell, the same way. We could appoint somebody, and even though you might be against this might work for us. this might work for us if we appoint a employee to the county till we solve this issue.
Well, we have a list of applicants. I mean, we can choose, even if they later decline and it's vacant, we'll just come back and appoint somebody else. But I think we should stick with our list of applicants.
Which applicants do you spot there, Doctor?
Well, I think we need to look at, if we're doing the reappointments tonight, we need to look at both positions and put 2 people on there.
Does
So,
Billy Cox have a rental space? Do we know?
I don't know, I didn't pull his application to see if he lists anything. I'm not 100% sure if I tell you that I think he does, but my confidence level is not high.
I believe
She would have to go.
I believe that he does.
who does?
I believe that he does.
Can you, the tax commissioner would like to say something?
I just a question. If this is something that the GBI is considered for prosecution, did they tell Walter Gordon, who's the Hart County attorney, the same thing they told our attorney?
That's what I wondered. I
If
don't know.
that's serious, then it seems like they would have communicated that to Hart County as well. That's just hard.
Well, they probably can't answer that question, but since the fact that our employee is the one that's on the investigation, I don't know if the GBI is going to go to Hart County or not, because they specifically are looking at our appointee.
Well, they would have to be looking at all of them if it's the conflict of interest,
Well-
because, I'm sorry, not all, but the 2, because they have 2 pilots too. They're not going to just think, if that's their concern, they're going to look at every board member who has that conflict. And there's clearly 3 that do. So,
They might make a ruling that they covered the whole thing, but I think right now they're zeroing in on the conflict of interest that we have in Franklin County.
well, I'm not comfortable removing them, and I wanted to wait and see what the conclusion of the GBI investigation was. But if our advice from our attorney is that we have no other choice, I'm hard pressed to get around that.
Commissioner, I apologize. Just I'm thinking, trying to solve the issue because I understand the concern. Perhaps it would be appropriate, in light of the fact that the legislation says what it says with regard to continuing to serve until your successor is appointed, and in light of the immediate concern that we're trying to avoid is y'all don't want to be lumped in with an investigation by it being argued that you're somehow complicit in him continuing to serve when you've been advised that there's a conflict. Perhaps it would be appropriate to request his resignation. I mean, there is no provision for that in the statute, but if you were to do that, that at least is official action on your part demonstrating a position contrary to complicity in continuing a conflict of interest.
So what you're saying is, if we request that as a board, that would relieve us not being in the future.
I mean, it would certainly position you better, I think. I mean, this is all, I'm giving you attorney-client
Right.
information in a public forum. That's.
I don't want to be in just a better position.
Well, I mean, that's, if you're not going to appoint a successor, I think that puts you in the best position, the most defensible position with regard to that issue.
Right. Were you finished calling out? I'm sorry. I think we interrupted
Before
you.
you do, Mr. Boyd Sewell texted me and said that Chairman Bridges talked with him on May 22nd about the airport authority, and he said no. So
Okay.
he would not be one to be on the airport authority.
All right.
That is correct. When he applied for positions and so forth, and we was discussing the issue, he did reply that he's not interested in the airport. I think he was more interested in the county's board. Well, we got 2 directions to go. Our attorney said we could vote to ask for his resignation. And I think we got another way to go without asking his resignation. I think I would look at the outstanding guy right there in the yellow shirt. Mr. Scott, if you volunteer, that might solve us issue here for a while. And then you could do your thing, and we'd have time to look at other people.
I just think you're putting an employee of the county in a bad situation, the same way we did our clerk. I mean, she got put in a bad situation and look what happened. I don't think it's appropriate to put somebody who works for the county in that position again.
I agree with that.
We've already had experience with this.
What about,
And there's nothing against Mr. Scott. I mean, absolutely nothing. I don't want us as a board to put another county employee into a position where it could have a negative outcome for him.
Well, I was thinking temporary, to solve the issue temporary, to get us out of this position.
I don't even want to chance that temporary. I think he does a great job in planning and zoning, and I would not want to lose him there by something coming up with this.
now, what about, did someone mention Andrew Murphy? He's the.
Well, that's what we asked.
What did he say?
He said that because he's an elected official, that would be akin to 2 offices.
Okay.
So he, just the same as Cody Grizzle.
Gotcha.
So the others were James McFarland and Alan Bryant, and
Jason Front said, and he's been appointed to the JDA. His preference on that would be, on airport would be no. Jennifer Renzetti, Carolee Coker, who's been put on planning. Courtney Umbahant, same situation. Alan Bryant, Andy Myers. Wait a minute. The gentleman that came in this afternoon.
Yeah, I thought there was someone else that.
I sent it to you guys. Hold on just a second, let me pull it up from my email.
would it be appropriate for us to take maybe a 15-minute recess so we can look at some of those applications again?
Absolutely.
I move that we take a 15-minute recess.
A second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor? All right, we're gonna take a 15-minute recess and we'll start back up. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back into the regular session. Have a motion to come back into the regular session.
I move.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Second. Thank you.
I'll say.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. Make a second. All in favor of getting back in the regular session? Thank you. Okay, we've consulted our attorney, looked at applications, and I think Dr. Maxson, you'll make a recommendation.
Yeah, I'm gonna move that we make a call or issue a call for the resignation of both of our appointees, and we call a special call meeting within the next week to look at making new appointments. So this would be, we're asking for both of our 2 appointees. That would be Bill Flowers and Eddie Addison, who are there, and ask them to resign.
Asking for their resignation. Do I have a second? We're gonna move.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Swales seconds that. In discussion. This is repeating the motion, and the second is to ask for both resignations of our appointees. And then, did you include having a call session with that?
Yes, having a called session within the next week to look at, to reappoint or to appoint new members to the airport authority.
So,
And the purpose of that would give us time to research and determine who we think would be the best people to appoint.
okay, you get that, Ms. Gina? And let's go ahead.
I was gonna say, on the call for resignation, or are you gonna authorize who, would you like me to draft a letter?
Yes, yes. So the motion is to authorize the county manager to draft a letter asking for the resignation of both appointees of the airport authority for Franklin County. And that would be Eddie Addison, and that would be Bill Flowers. And then the second part of the motion is that we call a special called meeting within the next week for the purpose of appointing new persons to the airport authority.
And I believe you specialize next Monday night, a week from now, 6 o'clock. Is that good?
I could do then. I couldn't do anything before that.
I'm sorry. Can you do next
Monday, I can
Monday?
do, yes.
Everybody do next Monday?
You do Monday?
If permissible with the commissioners, I'll have a different interim clerk. Please keep in mind next Tuesday is election day. We're gonna run her ragged, so I'll just bring in a different interim clerk for that meeting, if that's okay. Or not an interim clerk, but somebody to take minutes.
Okay.
So next Monday night at 6 o'clock p.m. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, I make that motion.
All right, we got a motion to send a letter of resignation for 2 appointees and a second. And including in that is have a special call meeting Monday, a week from tonight, that'd be the 8th, I believe. And be 6 o'clock to discuss specifically appointees and look at applications. We got a second and a motion. Any discussion?
I want to say that I feel like this is politically and personally driven, and I feel like tonight was a complete blindside on the board, that we got hit with this the way we did, and I don't think it's right. I don't think this is how Franklin County should do government, and I feel like the way this has gone about, it strikes me as very odd that the GBI got involved a week before appointments were supposed to be done, and all of this started getting pushed so hard. Maybe he's wrong, maybe he's not. But I think this is politically driven, I think it's petty, and I don't want to be a part of it.
Okay, so we got one comment, any other comments?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll comment. So sometimes we get little trinkets. I got this lavender spray for headache relief. I'm gonna be using this tonight. My headache is this. I agree solely with everything Commissioner Wester just said. I deal in insurance. I see bait and switch every day by shady insurance people. This is bait and switch. We came here with the understanding that we would do a brief discussion about appointments, that we weren't going to take any action, and that all the information was out there. We get here at this meeting, and all of a sudden the GBI is down our throats. I would have appreciated some information on that ahead of time. I would have appreciated the fact that we were going to come to this point where we needed to vote. I don't think that that's a lot to ask. And it's dirty. It's dirty politics is what it is. It does not make sense to me. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. We're here, and I'm going to vote on it.
Well, I'm gonna put my 2 cents in. Actually, we've been facing this issue, we asked the attorney to give us a ruling. We took that ruling and looked at it individually and also together. Actually, we just learned today, I just learned today, that the GBI was considering this issue. Therefore, I wanted to bring it to you today. Is
What
the day.
time today?
Excuse me. When I was talking to Bubba, the situation, he informed me just exactly what he informed all of us tonight. So, that's my 2 cents worth. Anybody else gonna comment?
I feel like we were blindsided as a board. We all should have had a clear understanding of what we were facing tonight, and we didn't. I didn't. I was not prepared to appoint or remove people from the airport authority. We had all talked, and I think you've met with all of us, and the consensus was, and you met with us individually, and the consensus was that we needed to wait to take action until after the GBI investigation. But tonight, we're kind of pushed into this decision. But it is what it is.
That's correct. In other words, when we learned something at the last moment, like Bubba presented to us and so forth, we had a choice, what direction to go. And I think we've been advised pretty well by our attorney. I trust his decision on what direction we should go.
I trust his decision.
Excuse me. He interject the direction we should go. Direction was to
I trust his decision, but we all get emails. It would have been nice to have got something today before we got here.
Yeah.
We get them all the time. But
That's
we didn't,
right.
I'll go back and go home and look, but I don't remember reading anything about it.
Okay.
I've asked this question before, but do we still know the origination of the GBI investigation? Is this something the county or anybody associated with the county initiated, or is this just hit everybody here out of the blue?
Well, I will state that I certainly didn't initiate GBI to do this.
Do you know
I
who
know
did? Do you know how it
the
was?
person that I've been talking to about the missing documents that we had mysteriously get vanished was the hangars and land leases and so forth that mysteriously disappeared when we our clerk left, and Mr. Addison come over and picked up the stuff. He claims he didn't get it. I'm not saying he did, but we've been using our investigation group with Jimmy LeCroy, and first thing I know, we're in the GBI situation.
Have you talked to Jimmy LeCroy since that time to find out if, because I'd mentioned that to you and you said that he could be asked.
I didn't ask him if he fetched him up. Okay, so we got a motion to the second.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
The only thing that me and my investigators know about is the fact that you had asked us to get them to come and look at the theft or the removal of the files that were missing.
Yeah.
And
That's
something
correct.
I'm aware of.
Okay.
And then when I got questions about this other, I said, I don't know what you're leading into. I said, but I do know about the file, that's all I know.
Absolutely. Jimmy's been doing a good job hunting for those files. So I guess it's still a mystery who brought them in. All right, any other statements? All in favor with the motion and second, please raise your right hand. It carries. Next thing is announcements. Ms. Thomas, you have any other announcements?
No, sir.
I have one on a positive note. I think Shane, you did a great job pointing out how hard our staff has fought for the TV situation for Franklin County. I want to publicly commend our staff and Doug Collins for getting this thing started. I know back during my first term, when I had a discussion with Representative Collins, what can we do about that? And he took it and he took off with it. And here it was 6 years later, and it finally happened. I want to commend our staff for doing that. Now we're in the stage that you explained, Shane. We're staying and hope they don't drag the feet to get the switches made. Any other announcements?
I just want to say that whenever I was elected as a commissioner, I was very humbled by the people. I was very honored by the people, and I have taken great pride in serving up here, and I've been proud to do it. But tonight, I am not proud of what has happened with this board.
Any other statements? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Mr. Webster makes the motion to adjourn. Second?
A second.
Dr. Michelson seconds. All in favor? We stand adjourned.